Greetings, my internet friends. I love you. You're the best. Thanks for joining me for yet another episode of Walking and Talking, the show where I walk and talk. There's a little bit of pep in my step today because today is the day that I uploaded all the previous Walking and Talking episodes to my main channel, where previously it was only Sitting and Smiling. So many people that have only seen Sitting and Smiling are now exposed for the first time to Walking and Talking, and I feel good about it. It feels good to me, because I feel right now I feel pretty finished with Sitting and Smiling, and it feels good to come out with a different thing that now it feels a little more authentic to how I want to be in the world at this time. And it's as strange as it may sound, it started to feel like Sitting and Smiling towards the end. Maybe there were started to be I had an attitude towards it that was more about maintaining something, whether it be a reputation or something that had some kind of success or something, or some kind of fame or something, to keep doing something that had been popular or notorious, whatever it is. And I had been thinking about how Walking and Talking might be less popular, and I still think it could be the case, but I finally decided just to transfer over to Walking and Talking anyways, and it feels somewhat liberating. The only drawback is that I'm sad that it may introduce a language barrier for people that don't speak English, but they're on YouTube now. In the settings, you can auto-generate these captions, and then you can translate them to all these different languages. And I tried it out. I tried putting it in Spanish because I know a little bit of Spanish, and it's not perfect, but it works surprisingly well. And I mean, I need to convey this message to people somehow. In a way that's other than English, because if you're understanding what I'm saying, then it's not a problem for you. But maybe if there's anybody listening to this that is bilingual, they could make a comment telling people how to do this, how to turn on the auto-generated captions. And that would be a big help. Otherwise, other possible contributing factors to there being a pep in my step could be that, well, first of all, I consume very little caffeine. I don't drink coffee, and I don't drink caffeinated tea except on very rare occasions, maybe a little bit of matcha or some green tea. But for the past few weeks I've had nothing, not even chocolate, and I was like really avoiding all of it. I was avoiding all sugar as well. I was just in a phase where I've just been in a phase where, because of some amount of like emotional turbulence in my life, suddenly I've been able to exercised an amount of discipline that had heretofore evaded me, and I've been able to eat extremely healthy and very modest amount of food, and it feels really good. I mean, it feels it's like more of a feeling of emptiness, but being able to abide in that feeling of emptiness feels like the right thing to do. But today I finally, you could say, broke down, and I ate some chocolate covered pistachios, you know, a couple handfuls or something, along with some nuts. And so it's entirely possible that, you know, having adjusted to experiencing, you know, my body without any kind of stimulants like that, and then for a few weeks, and then get a little bit of chocolate in there, it's potential that is elevating my energy level a little bit. And it was interesting. I went to the store today, and I was feeling, you know, all that discipline. Like, I had the discipline to only buy perfectly healthy things, and I saw this container of chocolate covered pistachios, and I feel like I decided in a very deliberate manner that I was going to purchase and consume some chocolate covered pistachios, not in like a needy way, like not feeling like I needed it, but that I wanted to include the effects on my personality that eating a little bit of chocolate once in a while might contribute. And what I mean by that is, it would be completely possible for me to be completely abstemious, you know, from pleasure. Like, I'm just I've been in this mode lately where I've been able to just reside in a somewhat state of anhedonia, or like just deliberate, of just you know, not being very interested in pleasurable things, and not feeling a lot of desire for pleasurable things, and, you know, being very like emotionally controlled, kind of, more or less, and, you know, like, you know, because of like I had the aforementioned emotional turbulence, you know, feeling a great need to really regulate my emotional state. And, you know, one of the ways of doing that is really like eating super healthy and you know, just enough food so to maintain a pretty flat emotional level, so that, you know, I don't have ups and downs. But, you know, I made this decision today that today I wasn't going to be completely abstemious. I wasn't going to you know, I wasn't going to be kind of like barren of emotional ups and downs. And because
yeah, but just the sound.
I kind of thought about myself, what I might be like if I, you know, was just like 100% strict about everything that I consume. And I imagined the kind of personality associated with that, and I thought of it as being a little bit cold, you know, a little bit just like too serious and cold, and just lacking some warmth and friendliness and like easygoingness. And I thought about that, and then I thought about, you know, like having a minor indulgence of these chocolate covered pistachios, just allowing myself a minor indulgence. And I imagined that it might just like it would help me kind of like relax my personality a little bit, you know, and be just a little bit more warm and approachable, as opposed to just like so seriously like focused on some kind of purity. And so yeah, I had some chocolate and some nuts, you know, after eating like a healthy breakfast. Like I had some eggs with greens, and you know, and then at some point I like had this snack with some nuts and chocolate and some dried mulberries to boot. And then I did that while I was uploading all the past walking and talking videos to my main YouTube channel, which felt like this, you know, it felt like turning a somewhat new chapter in my life or something like that, to some extent. And now I feel kind of relaxed, and I feel some energy, you know, maybe it's coming from that deliciousness, and like able to just offer a little more in terms of like easygoingness and warmth and friendliness right now than maybe I would have been if I were super strict and serious about everything. And so maybe there's something to be learned there about like the nature of discipline and the value of indulgence, and you know, the value of discipline versus the value of flexibility, that sort of thing. And I don't feel worried about what I'm saying in this video. It's possible that you're only recently discovering the Walking and Talking series, although I've been doing some episodes for a while and uploading them to my second YouTube channel that fewer people know about. But it basically just is what the name implies. All I do is walk and talk, and I try to talk pretty continuously. I don't have any pre-planned subject. It often becomes fairly reflexive. That is, I'm continually kind of narrating the state of my mind and the thoughts that arise, and kind of letting the thoughts generate themselves, you know. And in that way by just saying everything that I think. It's kind of a process first of observing my own thoughts for an extended period of time, and also just making them audible and to transmit them. And there's not a goal in any sort of conventional sense, but one way I could describe this would be as kind of demonstrating some process of mindfulness. And it's not so much demonstrating in some kind of instructive or didactic sense, like this is how you do it, because I don't have any kind of motivation of telling anybody that they should be anything in particular, or they should be anywhere, they should think any particular way, or that there's a particular way of thinking that's superior than others, because I'm not actually, thinking in like a categorical way like that, and definitely not placing any kind of evaluation on what I'm thinking or how I'm thinking. I'm trying mainly to avoid evaluating anything. And evaluating happens sometimes, but then I just kind of notice myself evaluating, and then that becomes the object of thought, and then I'll keep thinking about thinking, and the process just keeps going on endlessly, and thoughts keep moving. We're moving through time, but we're not exactly going anywhere in particular. We're not trying to gain any knowledge about anything. Interesting things might happen, interesting things might be said, interesting to me, interesting to you, but they just come up, and then they recede into the past, and something new comes up. And sometimes it's really hard. Because sometimes it's painful to hear myself talk. I'll have feelings of embarrassment, a lot of self-criticism sometimes. I'll start judging what I'm saying and worrying about what you, the viewer, might be thinking about me. And sometimes that happens, but it always resolves in some way. I always get past that eventually. But right now I don't feel any of that. I feel pretty relaxed. For those of you who've watched a lot of Walking and Talking already, this might be a little bit of rehash or something, because I seem to be kind of surmising what Walking and Talking is all about. And so I apologize if it feels like any kind of rehash, but you don't have to worry, because we've got, this is a 4-hour video, and we're certainly not even going to be able to, if we wanted to only rehash things for 4 hours. It's gonna have to go somewhere new because, you know, I can't, my mind isn't even capable of just, you know, recalling something for 4 hours. You know, it's going to wander, and we're just gonna watch it wander. It feels, I actually feel pretty comfortable in my body right now, which is a nice feeling. And it's not a feeling that I would necessarily notice, but I just like kind of noticed like that I don't have any aches or pains or tiredness right now, and I just wanted to like appreciate that, because that's not always going to be the case. And it's like just, it's relatively warm day for the season, and so it's just comfortable now to be here. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I'm hoping that some of that ease of being here can maybe be transmitted to you. Like the muscles, I feel like the muscles in my brow, my forehead and my eyebrows, like, are always a good indicator of how tense I'm feeling. And I'm just like, they feel pretty relaxed right now. My brow is unfurrowed. And that feels pretty great. And I feel, at the moment, I feel kind of uncommonly positive. I think I'm usually hovering more around neutral or something. And sometimes in the beginning of the videos is when difficulty, when there's some difficulty or some form of pain or self-consciousness or something that I have to deal with for a while before I get to a more free-flowing state. Maybe that'll happen later in the video. You know, I don't ever, if I'm feeling good like this, I don't ever want to fall under the assumption that it's going to last forever, because that's certainly not true. But I'll appreciate it while it lasts. And take it as evidence that even if in the future I'm experiencing difficulty and pain, that good feelings will eventually return to me. I tend to always look in this furniture dumpster to see what there is, and there always is just like pallets and trash and broken furniture, but I keep checking it because it's not much work to check it, and I think maybe someday there'll be a nice piece of furniture in there that's not broken. Maybe I haven't yet delved really deeply into really a really focused attention on what I'm saying, you know, like I have in some other videos. For example, the things I've been saying so far have reference to an abstract idea about walking and talking that applies to the idea of walking and talking beyond just this video here and just this moment now. That is, the things that I've said, you know, are in relation to past walking and talking videos in a kind of abstract way, and where I feel like the real meat is when I start to focus much more acutely on the present moment. But I'm not gonna force that yet, you know. Because at the same time, I can also just kind of accept the nature of how I'm talking, the nature of how I'm thinking right now, which happens to be, you know, which happens to include some ideas that are a little bit broader than just the mere present. It includes some references to the past and the future, you know, what has happened in the past, what tends to happen, you know. If I think about what tends to happen, that's based on memories of what's happened in the past, and it involves a projection about what's likely to happen in the future. So while it involves the past and the future, it still is happening absolutely in the present. And so there's no reason to reject anything. You know, I don't have to like exercise a huge amount of control over my mind and force it to, you know, shut out any thoughts about the past or the future. And especially if I remember that thoughts about the past and the future, they're still occurring in the present. They're like extensions of the present, you know? Memories, we think of, they're of the past, but what they are mental structures that exist here in your brain in the present. And they're activated in the present. And even when you're thinking about the past, you're doing that thinking in the present. You're never not, you know? So I feel right now as if I'm able to think with a lot of ease and talk with a lot of ease. Which hasn't always been the case. When I look around and just kind of I'm noticing things around me But kind of what I'm noticing is kind of just noticing the phenomenon of me experiencing the world around me. And if the things that I see and hear and feel have some kind of quality of freshness about it, it's really just because I'm appreciating that I'm just appreciating the phenomenon of experiencing them right now. The fact that there's an experiencer present, or at least apparently so. And maybe occasionally a thought comes across my mind about the future that is kind of a worry, but almost immediately, and then that thought comes across, and then there's like a physiological response to that thought, and then that happened like maybe a few seconds ago when I just started to think about a what if this video recording glitches or something and doesn't record for some reason, and this will be wasted. And because I started to value what's going on right now. I started to think this is good, what's going on right now. This is good material. I hope this gets captured. Wouldn't it suck if it didn't get captured or didn't get recorded because of some glitch? But as the moment that thought came up, I was able to let it go because I know practically that I've taken all practical measures to ensure that the recording works, and so there's nothing that needs to be done in that regard. And so I let it go, and then continued to experience a sense of ease. Although, like, now maybe I'm starting to think about the thought that I just described, and maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I messed it up by even alluding to a worrisome thought, or a negative emotion or something like that. Maybe I should have just like left that out of the picture and just stayed continuously in the state of ease that I've been describing. And now as I listen to myself describing that process, that it occurs to me that that's kind of, there's some silliness to that. And at the same time, I feel I'm like kind of letting myself feel unattached to this sense of ease, and letting my you know, not worrying about worrying, allowing for the possibility of worry, or allowing for the possibility of a more consternated type of thinking. And but the whole idea of it sounds kind of silly to me, and so I remain feeling fairly lighthearted about everything, but also, you know, definitely not. I'm trying not to cling to this feeling of lightheartedness, and making an allowance for myself to feel difficulty or seriousness if something like that comes up. It's not really to describe my state now. It feels pretty stable, like fairly flat, but still easy going. And I don't feel a pressure to keep talking really continuously or really fast. I feel perfectly fine talking at this rate. I just now started to, oh wow, look at these lichen, that's amazing. I don't know how close up this can focus. Look at that lichen. Man, I wish I could get really close up on this. I started thinking about your experience, and I felt fairly positive. I felt like I feel happy to share this feeling with you. I feel thankful that you're having this experience of watching this video or just listening to the audio, because that's a way to do it too. My visual sense feels like kind of pleasantly stimulated, not super stimulated, but just like visually I'm just kind of like kind of pleasantly taking in all the sights that are around, the colors and shapes. There's a duck. I'm feeling a lot of warmth towards you, and like I have this feeling of wanting just to be a friend of some sort to you. And just happy for this opportunity to be able to express something to you. And it's not so much about expressing as it is about just connecting in this mediated way through YouTube. And also the sounds that I'm hearing feel like welcome to my ears. I don't feel disturbed by anything. I don't feel annoyed. And I'm not making any sort of claim that I experience reality like this all the time. I certainly, like any other person, feel annoyed and disturbed and uncomfortable at various points going throughout life. The full gamut of human emotions. So I don't want you to imagine that I'm some kind of special person who's like always existing in like a state of easygoingness. It's not true. But for the time being, I'm feeling a lot of easygoingness. I feel okay with leaving some space here and there, but I did feel a kind of desire to jump back in and continue talking, to maintain this verbal connection. I'm pointing the camera around, and as I'm looking around, I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm finding these things really beautiful, like this, and this. I don't feel any desire to dwell on any particular object in my external world. it feels just nice to be traveling through it and allow these things to come into my perception and then go out of my perception. As new things come into my perception. But I think most significantly right now, the feeling of being able to share this experience with you is really enhancing the experience for me. If I were just walking here without the camera, without having this means of transmitting something to you, I'm certain that I wouldn't be having the same experience. And so again, I just want to express that I'm profoundly grateful for you being here right now. And I hope that it can be, I just hope for it to be a good experience for you as well. If it can even be a fraction of the experience that I'm experiencing, then I feel happy about that. And of course, you know, I'm thinking about this as being a really good experience. If I'm thinking, I must be contrasting with, you know, the possibility of a bad experience. And you know, I think as I mentioned beforehand, early on in the video, there's been some emotional turmoil in my life, or not so much turmoil as like emotional pain, and which isn't, I'm not pointing to that pain as necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing that, you know, that I've experienced. And I'm kind of recognizing the likelihood, or at least this is maybe my interpretation or a theory or something, that, you know, the positive feelings that I'm feeling right now are maybe the flip side of the pain that I experienced recently. So it's like, I do really believe that our emotional state tends to be kind of dualistic, that for every emotion that we feel, there's going to be a corresponding opposite to it that we're going to experience at some point. When you feel the difficulty of what seems to be a huge problem in your life, a huge problem, when that problem finally goes away or is solved somehow, or you figure out how to see it differently, it's like the corresponding relief is, in my estimation, equivalent to the difficulty that you experienced. And so maybe this sense of ease that I'm feeling, it's like, feels so welcome and feels so significant, as because maybe I've recently felt like some negative thoughts, or some like rumination going on, some negative rumination, or feelings of loneliness, or just like disconnection, and feelings of self-criticism, and just kind of evaluating myself. Or thinking about myself in somewhat limiting categoristic terms, you know, creating too much of an image of myself, whether it be positive or negative. But you know, while experiencing those things, like being fairly aware that's what was happening, you know, being conscious of the fact that I was ruminating, or being conscious of the fact that I was judging myself about something, and knowing that this is just an unproductive thought process, and so striving towards reversing it. And sometimes in my life, you know, external to walking and talking, I can be thinking about walking and talking, and I can be thinking about it in a limited way, in an evaluative or judgmental way, or just like a logical way, and judging it as you know, like thinking about all the problems with it, or like the way that it's inadequate or something, and then you know, and like not feeling good about it. And then, you know, now in the having the experience of doing it, all that way of thinking is gone, and it's replaced by just this feeling of openness and appreciation. And a way of thinking that's not that feels like it transcends logic and evaluation, and sees, you know, logic and evaluation being just relative ways of thinking, you know, relative to some presupposed goal, or you know, abiding by some system of evaluation that is by no means ultimate or inherently true. You know? And like outside of walking and talking, I might be thinking about my life in the same kind of way of you know, thinking about myself and my life in the same kind of way of it's lacking things, it's inadequate in certain ways. What am I going to do in the future, you know? What am I going to do? Where's my security for the future? You know? Um, like, what if in the future I'm unhappy? You know, that kind of thing. Like, what if in the future I'm missing some aspect of life, and it makes me unhappy? And you know, now I'm not worrying about any of that stuff. And I'm also not worrying about that stuff, you know. And I'm also not rejecting the idea of worrying about that stuff. I'm not saying that there's never any use in thinking about things like that. And I'm not saying that my thinking about that thing doesn't have any kind of function or something, but in this moment that's that type of worrying is just seems kind of impossible at the moment. And I feel just like, I don't know, like I'm doing at the moment. There's nothing I would rather be doing right now. And I'm not worried about my future at all right now. And you know, even like the idea, even this like thinking about myself is kind of exploded, you know, like conceptualizing my life and like conceptualizing my future. Like, I'm not really doing that right now. It's like I'm not thinking about myself right now, really. I mean, in a sense you could say that I'm talking about myself incessantly, you know. And in some way one could argue that this is the most narcissistic type of media possible, you know. This is me kind of talking about myself for 4 hours. But I'm just yeah, like I said, I'm just not like thinking about myself that way. I'm not thinking about like I'm not like imagining like a self to be narcissistic to, you know. And I'm not saying that there's well, I was starting to you know, I was starting to say that you know, I'm aware of a self here, but as I started to try to say that, I got a little bit tripped up because as I started to say it, it started to become unclear what exactly I was talking about. This idea of myself. You know, I'm certainly like here sensing things. I can hear myself talk. I can look down and I can look at my body I can see, you know, the front of my body. I can't see my own face, of course. If I touch my hand to my face, I can, you know, my face feels my hand and my hand feels my face. And I can sense the world around me. And I can kind of, I can perceive myself thinking too, to some extent, you know. Maybe if I pay attention, you know, if I pay attention, I can, you know, perceive the thoughts forming in my head just before they come out of my mouth. But that's even hard too, because to some extent, yeah, it's I'm trying to determine, you know, whether I'm seeing myself think before I talk, or whether I'm just seeing myself, witnessing myself talk, you know, hearing myself talk. And it's pretty close in there. It's a little hard to differentiate. I'm gonna just stop and restart the video here, because just to ensure that no glitch happens, because if I stop and restart the video, in case a glitch has happened, then it should be reset and continue recording. So I felt, you know, confused because I think I started talking about how I wasn't thinking about myself, how I wasn't thinking about a self, and then I wanted to clarify it by saying that I'm still aware of myself, but the extent that I'm aware of myself, like what there is here to constitute a self that I'm aware of, is just like, you know, there's what I can see, you know, there's this body that I assume I associate as being my body. And then there's the rest of the world, which I assume is the rest of the world. And then there's the sound that I'm hearing, which consists of my own voice and, you know, the kind of rustling sounds of my clothes and the sounds of my footprints here, and then the sounds of my environment. There's the sense perception here, you know, feeling my own body, like the feeling of my clothes on my body and the weight of my body on the soles of my feet, and, you know, the interaction of the air against my skin, and, you know, maybe some internal feelings like feeling my bladder a little bit because I maybe have to pee a little bit. and then there's being aware of the thoughts going on. So there's all of that, but it's hard for me to say that any of that constitutes myself. You know, like I don't have any evidence of that that's not like kind of like conceptually derived, you know? Like I can sense there's sensory input here that I'm aware of, but the differentiation of myself and the rest of reality, and you know what I'm perceiving, it actually feels like that's like a product of my thinking to some extent. Or a product of my mind. And even, you know, I am abstractly aware of your presence as a viewer, separated by some time and some distance, but that also feels to me like a product of my thinking, and so like that separation between us feels to me to some extent not inherently real. And I wonder if you know, I'm referring to you, if you might be able to experience the same thing, because where you are, you know, you have fundamentally the same thing going on as I do. You are sensing things, you know, through your various sensory receptors, and you know, you're hearing the sound of my voice, and you're able to understand the meaning of it. And so my idea of yourself there in relation to the rest of the world, and in relationship to me, and maybe you have an idea of me, but I wonder if you observe just the nature of where that's coming from, where, you know, like this idea that you have of me being this separate person, you know, is a product of your mind and your thoughts, and which is in relationship to the your sensory experience right now, like, and if you really pay attention to, you know, just the pure quality of what you're experiencing right now, you might be able to notice that, you know, this experience is all that you have. It's all that is available to you right now. There are thoughts about who you are. There are thoughts about things removed, like the past and the future, and different places geographically, and conceptions of you know, who you are in relation to, you know, an external world. But all of those things are experienced in the present. They, you know, It's like your mind is creating those things right now. Your mind is sensing things. You know, your eyes are sensing this world visually. And you're hearing this auditorily, and you know, you're feeling the touch sensations, and then there's your mind thinking things, and like all of these things are just happening right now. And so in a very real sense, like right now, this experience that you're having is all that is available to you. And you know, there is this notion of free will, of agency, that, you know, you're in control of this experience. You can do something. But that again is dependent on conceptions of the past and the future, and conceptions of who you are. And you know, you can think that, you know, if I want to, like 3 seconds from now, I can move my right arm up into the air, or I can spin around in my chair, and you know, while being in one sense true, in another sense, like, it's in the present moment that any of those thoughts are able to exist, and it's also in the present moment that any of those things are able to happen. And if you observe closely, like any of those moments, I think like still this sense of the self and this sense of the free will are still just kind of the products of what's happening in the present moment now. And you know, this doesn't have any implications, you know, about how to like live differently or anything, really. I don't think. And you know, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have any specific implications about, you know, what you should do, because, like, you know, even this idea of what you should do is again like relying, you know, is again like this product of the sense of the self and the past and the future, that is something that is just occurring like right now in the present, and occurring in, you know, as a product of thought. And so, like, in my experience right now, like the more that I talk about this right now, the more I feel like I'm just kind of observing this going on, and the more that I just kind of try to observe, like, what is me, like what is the essence of me, you know? Like, you know, I can act like I have free will, you know, like I'm, of course, like, you know, I'm walking here, I'm talking here, I can choose to walk wherever I want, you know, spin around, I can say whatever I want, but I can't really, like, and you know, there's a kind of truth to that, but the truth to that is still completely dependent on a certain kind of conception, that a conception that's just like kind of arising right now in the present. And I can't avoid this other truth that all these things are just like happening now, and even to say the word happening is feels like it's almost too long or something, or it's like it's like too broad or something. Like, even in the middle of happening, like just the middle of the word happening, like the really acute instantaneous now moment, like whatever that is just like something that's like eternally now, and in it there isn't a self, and there isn't a happening, and there isn't, you know, there isn't exactly, you know, movement and change or something. It's neither something solid and fixed, nor is it something that like has a changing nature. It's like yeah, I'm aware of my changing experience, you know. I'm moving through the world, and at each moment what I perceive is different. But the fundamental quality is that every one of those perceptions like occurs in absolutely in this present that is eternal. And you know, like even my sense perception is something that you know, to like the continuity of my sensory perception is still a product of mind, of thought, of connecting with memories of the past, you know, like what just happened half a second ago is kind of, there's an impression of that stored in my neurons as a memory, and so I can recall it. And there's and what I think will happen in the future is 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 also only a thought in my mind that is created based on my memories of the past and a thought of how things generally happen. But that continuity, you know, this idea that I keep seeing things, you know, that I saw that tree and now I'm seeing this tree, and I'm like continuing to see trees along the river. Like, that continuity is still a product of thought, and that thought is something that is only here in the moment. And like in actuality, like there's not a real continuity, or, you know, what is truly continuous is just this nowness, which is fundamentally unchanging and eternal. And, you know, if even my perception, you know, my sensory perception is not fundamentally continuous, like how could there possibly be like a continuous self? That, you know, that is anything separate from this like eternal nowness. How could that possibly be? Other than as a certain kind of projection, a certain kind of like, yeah, like some kind of hologram or something that springs up from the present, or something like that, created by the mind. And like, when I like right now, like kind of abiding in this kind of awareness, things that seem difficult, like loss and change, don't occur to me as problems. Because there wasn't, you know, like there wasn't ever, you know, a continuous thing that was lost. There wasn't ever a solid thing to be changed. And like even the idea of being born and dying doesn't occur to me as a problem. It's you know, like those ideas like continue to feel to me like another projection on the, you know, another projection on the screen that is just this present moment, you know. I'm walking to this kind of like secluded area so that I can take a pee. And if you would be so understanding, I'll give you a fair warning. I'm gonna take a pee now while continuing to record here. So if you don't want to hear the sound of me peeing, you could mute it or look away or skip ahead a few seconds. But I also find the idea of peeing right now a humorous kind of counterbalance to the nature of the things that I've been saying, which you know, could be described as somewhat lofty or disconnected from like the workaday world of you know everyday life, where we don't tend to think about our things this way. Even if things it's like things being this way is like the basis of our experiencing the world with a notion of separate self. But I think that what I'm describing is an understanding that everybody has somewhere in them, you know, that it's not like a knowledge that's imparted to you from the outside. It's in some weird way, it's like we've always been aware of this, but maybe there's some kind of like forgetting that happens. Or the projection of the self becoming so convincing or something, but it's just like I don't know, like maybe it's possible to some extent for your like awareness to be centered inside that projection of the self, and then when something happens that just reminds you of the falsehood of that continuity of self, then you're just kind of you know you're just reminded of the falsehood, and like it's like you zoom back and like see reality a little more clearer. And like those reminders can sometimes come in form of painful things, like the experience of loss or change. You know, the experience of loss or change and the pain associated with that is something that I kind of interpret that pain as just like the waking up, you know. like you experience that pain of feeling a loss or a change of something, that we're kind of operating as if that were a continuous aspect of yourself, a certain conceptual arrangement, something that was part of your supposed identity, like a relationship to a person outside of yourself, or a relationship to a position, or like a reputation, and and all these things are concepts that your mind is completely creating, in your projected world, this world that we project as being around us and in relation to us as the individual. The individual like relates to this world in conceptual ways. We have a concept of what our role is in the world, what our place is in relation to it, and something comes along out of our control that disrupts that perceived relationship, and we feel the pain of that. And if you are able to like fully feel that pain and not avoid it, not avoid the pain, and not kind of attribute it to something external, then it can be the pain is just like can be for you a movement towards remembering the inherent discontinuity of yourself. If you're forced to let go of a certain kind of conception about who you were in the world, in my understanding, the only way to let go of that peacefully and continue experiencing reality peacefully is to come to terms with the fact that that conception was never inherently true and continuous in the first part. It was one aspect of your mind, a constellation of thoughts in your mind. And it's just one little part of how through the mind we create this duality of the self and the other, the self and the external world. There's perception, there's sense perception here. and like this, the sense perception is like, you know, we think of that as being the link between ourselves and the rest of the world, you know, the bridge of how this self is able to experience the rest of the world. But without the mind creating this idea of self and the rest of the world, you can see that you can understand that your sensory experience is not like, it's not a link between the two, but it's like completely continuous connection, and like there is no actual separation. There is no actual separation. Like, you know, it's like there's an experience here, and then on top of that experience, the mind is creating a notion of the experiencer and the world that is experienced, the subject and the object. But if you are able to like kind of loosen up that you know, the tightness of that conception, that, you know, the solidity of that notion of separateness, and the way you do it is by directing your attention, like, you know, just directly on the nature of experience itself. Like, what's going on now? What is this here? What is this experience? Like, what's, you know, just like right here now, like, what is this? Like, is there really a me and everything else, and like you know, and you can, and then you can see that, like, and that's when it becomes hard to deny that the experience is all that there is. There exists nothing beyond experience. It's not that there's you know, a self and an other, an experiencer and a world that is, you know, that are linked by experience. It's like both of those ideas, the self and other, are just like mere components of experience itself. They're just both like kind of like two sides of it, but not really two sides. And, you know, I'm like having this experience while I'm talking, and you're having this experience while you're hearing, and while I state it, I state it that way, you know, I'm saying I, and I'm saying you, and you're hearing I and you, and they are perhaps triggering certain conceptions in your mind. Just be aware of the way that the, you know, the sound of those words is linked to concepts in your mind. And that actually, like, all there is this experience happening, you know, this experience of hearing this sound, you know. There's the sound that's coming out of your computer speaker, and, you know, within it you might perceive, you're thinking about, like, there's my voice, and there's these environmental sounds, and all those coming out of your computer speakers or your headphones, or, you know, however you're hearing this. And then there's your sound, and there's the environmental sounds around you, your environment, and like those things are not actually separate. That is all just part of your auditory perception, you know. It's all those are all, you know, the same in your auditory perception, and your mind might be doing something to create some differentiation there, or to focus your attention on one aspect of what you're sensing and block out another aspect of what you're sensing. But, you know, even if you just want to do this, you know, limit this exercise to, like, the sound that you're hearing. Like, what if you kind of don't direct your attention only to the sound of my voice, but, like, just kind of, like, direct your attention to, you know, this experience of hearing in general, of, you know, everything that you're hearing right now, regardless of whether it's coming from this video or somewhere else in your world. It's just everything that's coming into your ears, and then just kind of observe this process of hearing. Like, what is it like to hear something? Like, you know, how is it that I'm hearing? Like, what is it to hear a sound, you know? Where, you know, like, what is the sound? And you can observe, like, does it require me thinking about something? You know, does it require recalling the past or thinking about the future? Because, you know, in order to understand language, you know, for the meaning of this language, for this language to have some meaning in your mind, you know, memories of what I have said come into play. You know, if I speak a sentence, by the time I'm speaking the final word in the sentence, then your mind has to have some recall of what I said at the beginning of the sentence, and to create a meaning out of it. But still, there is no time when you are not experiencing that just exactly right now, you know. Even the creating of the meaning is something, is a projection of your mind, you know. So, like, maybe when you're hearing, you can be, you know, observing, like, this sensation of hearing, this sensory information, you know, coming into your experience at every moment. And you can be observing at the same time what your mind does with that hearing, what thoughts happen, you know, in relation to that hearing. And then you can do this with, you know, other individual senses as well. You can instead of focusing your attention on, you know, like the screen or any one particular point in your field of vision, you can just kind of like observe your entire field of vision. Just kind of like just kind of try and observe everything that's in your field of vision at once without focusing on one particular area. You know, that'll, you know, it might include your screen and then just the rest of the world around you. And maybe it includes part of your own body, like maybe you can see like the side of your nose, or like you can see your eyebrow, or like the bottom of your eyebrow. And then maybe if you're looking down, you can see, you know, most of the front of your body other than your face and your head. And you can do it with your sense of touch, like you know, just observe like every touch sensation that you're aware of. And like where's the delineation between your body and the rest of the world? And is it the feeling of touch that denotes that boundary? Or is the sense of touch actually like just continuity? Like, is it just indicating continuity between what you would think of as your body and what you would think of as the rest of the world? Now you can do this with every individual sense, and then you can also do it with all of your sensory experience at once, and then it becomes more about, you know, your entire experience. You know, and then there's also this, like, you could also consider it another sense, but like your perception of your own thoughts, your perception of your own mind, like what's happening in your mind, you can observe that. So you take everything there is to be experienced right now and just observe what is it like to experience that. And like other than those things, like other than what is being experienced, you know, like seeing, hearing, touching, you know, maybe smelling or something, and thinking, like beyond that, is there something else, you know? Other than that, is there like an actual experiencer that's separate from those objects? And you know, when I do this, I don't come up with any experiencer. You know, I can't find a separate experiencer apart from these objects of experience. And then I'm just like experiencing experience. I'm being experience, like, you know. And it feels clear to me that like whatever I am is not apart from experience. I just am experience. Like, and you could further like kind of make variations on that and just say like, I am the world and the world is I. But even when you say those words, it like kind of, it for me tends to like, it tends to, I tend to have associations with those things that are separate, and so then it like brings up some silly image of merging or something, which is unnecessary. It's like there isn't actually the separation. There's a deer. He's still, there it goes. At the moment, I feel kind of heartened and encouraged by the experience that I'm having right now, that I'm able to have this experience, and at the same time in my memory I can recall an opposite sort of experience, where I feel very much separate. I feel very strongly this separation of me and the rest of the world, and in a bad way. Where it's as if my mind is kind of is just unable to has an incessant kind of thinking that is incessantly creating this selfhood in a way that's painful, because that selfhood worries about itself and feels at odds with the world, in competition with the world. It has to fight against the world to keep being. And like this experience like feels like it comes as like the antidote to that. But I kind of have to like recognize also like the prevalence of that, you know, like what I'm calling this projection of the self. Like recognize that, you know, it happens and it will happen, and it feels very real. It feels very real when it's happening. But is it, you know, is it feeling really, or is it like thinking? It's like thinking. I don't know. It's more like thinking, and the thinking like creating this real this like strong division, a strong duality. And I'm just like, you know, I'm wondering like, is that inevitable? Is that inevitably going to happen? Or is it possible to at least, you know, guide my life more in the direction of experiencing reality in this way? And it's so funny to think about, because like from my current perspective, this feeling of separateness, of selfhood, of, you know, of kind of like painfully thinking about myself separate from the world, that feels like unreal to me right now. But also in my memory of having that experience, it's like I know that it feels real. So it's like while having that experience that I'm remembering, like this experience this experience actually feels unreal, you know? It feels like, you know, it feels like a harsh reality that, you know, that I'm just at odds with the world, in competition. Like there's competition and I'm just not good enough or something. And like having the experience of like whatever freedom that I might have felt at other times was illusory or something, or substanceless. But you know, this is me like kind of thinking about the past. You know, these are, you know, from this perspective right now, like these are abstractions, and you know, along the same lines of those abstractions, I can also, you know, think about, if I, think about my life as this linear thing, which, you know, at the present moment does not feel like a true perception, a real perception, but you know, a kind of a relative, incomplete, abstract truth that feels real sometimes. That, you know, within that linear self, the linear life, there has been movement towards more of this kind of clarity and wisdom, if I may put it in such glorious terms. Like an increasing wisdom, or just like this kind of awareness being like more, being, you know, pervading reality increasingly, or something like that. Like even if I am experiencing the pain of separate selfhood, it's like, as time has gone on, increasingly there's been, you know, still a thread of awareness, increasingly strong thread of like the fleeting nature of that pain, and also just the function of that pain, and the awareness of that pain being this reminder of it being a result of forgetting, the essential discontinuity of the self. Alright, I stopped and restarted the video, and it seemed a little frozen there for a moment. I think we're going again now. And yeah, I was kind of talking about how as clear as I feel now about the you know, the illusory nature of the continuous self, and like the fundamentalness of this like ever-present, eternal, unchanging nowness, you know, which is and you know, like the sense of continuity of sense perception and mind and self, like all being kind of mental projections out of the now, you know, that are occurring completely within now, but in some sense are like a hologram, like two-dimensional surface, if that represents, you know, exactly the now, you know, one slice, and then like within that there's all this information that makes it look like there's a future and a past and a self that is continuous in the past and future. But still within that projection, you know, that I'm experiencing right now, I can experience memories. I'm able to experience memories of feeling very strongly this separation of self. And what's that about? You know, like It feels so real sometimes. And, you know, have memories about experiencing the pain of you know, a loss of that sense of self or a threat to it. But also, you know, sensing that there's this possibility of generally moving out of that way of experiencing things. But even that movement is illusory from this perspective. You know? Like they're only, you know, like this, like having this realization of there being, you know, nothing apart from the existence of experience itself, you know, there being nothing more than experience. Even the notion of like a person having that realization is you know, is implausible, you know, like the notion of having that realization, or of the notion of learning or progressing towards that is rendered untrue, you know, or impossible. Like if there was an illusion in the past, like even that illusion is an illusion. And even that notion of the past, that notion of, you know, if there was a me that was ignorant of this in the past, like that notion of me is illusory, because this experience is like gaining access to infinity, like an eternal kind of truth. You know, where like the past self doesn't really exist. Like the me that conceives of myself as different, like doesn't exist, you know. And from this perspective, never existed. But it seems, you know, there's got to be, it seems like there's got to be some reality to that, you know, like some reality to that me, like the me that feels hungry and needs to eat, the me that feels tired and needs to sleep, like, and the me that like got up and put my things together and put my shoes on and put my coat on to walk outside and make this video today. like I have a memory of that me, but I mean still it's a projection of this moment. It's you know, it's a memory that is only part of this experience. And you know, I could talk about how this experience is dependent on certain aspects of a separate me. You know, that like I had to learn certain things. I had to go a certain way through life in order to have this experience of you know, walking and talking, sitting on this rock and talking. But it's at the moment, you know, I can't like, you know, I can't logically say that nothing in the past ever happened, you know. I can't, you know, logically, yes, there's, you know, I was born and I was raised, and I did everything that I did in my life, and that brought me to where I am now, and had all the experiences that I had. But from, you know, just from my perspective, like all of that just feels like memory that's contained within this present experience right now. It's like everything is contained within this right now. Maybe I'll turn the other way so you can see the sky. I don't know if there's as comfortable a sitting spot as that one there. I'll try this sitting spot. I feel this you know, like a sense of calm that feels so deep that it's not dependent on anything. I mean, I don't know, I guess it's depending on having this experience right now. And it's certainly enhanced by this. I guess what I'm calling, what I will call, like, this connection with you, this transmission through YouTube, but like this idea of connecting with you right now is like, it just feels like this component of my current experience that, you know, what am I trying to say? You know, like of course, like you exist, you know, abstractly within my mind right now, but that's a part of my experience right now that is feels like just an integral part of it, and a really positive part of it. And like to put it in other words, just like the other coin, the other side of that coin is that, you know, your thought of me as something separate is just, you know, your conception of me as a person, a separate person, is just like this component. It's a product of your mind that is a component of your present experience. Like I feel a type of calm right now that feels like, right now I feel like, you know, accepting of death, but just, you know, not worried about it, accepting of life. Accepting of like the continuance of my life until my death, and like of those not being separate things, and of the death being like a kind of change that's not fundamental at all, and the fundamental nature of experience, like, and which is inseparable from reality, will not change at all. It's like, you know, that you know, like the nature, I guess, like it's like the more superficial qualities will change, just like they're always changing, you know, throughout our lives, and then at death they'll change more drastically than compared to, like, you know, separate moments in our lives, I suppose. But I can experience that change as not being a negative thing, and that the underlying fundamental quality remains unchanged. And like the I'm sorry if it's really cheesy, but like I just like, it occurred to me just this feeling that I love you, that I like not in the personal sense that I like need to possess you, but like that I mean I guess to say that I love you, it occupies some kind of like intermediate territory between this experience of like of unified reality, you know, of non-separateness, and the notion of separate people. So like if I say I love you, it implies that there's a me here and there's a you there, and that there's a kind of linkage that is love. But for me, what that is really pointing to is this reality that that separation doesn't really exist. And that like this fundamental, you know, what reality is, this experience. In this experience now, there is no separateness, you know. It's just this experience happening now, and abiding in that, abiding in this reality, it's like there is no like there is no me or you to like have love between. It's just like that like love is kind of just like an illusion, not an illusion, an allusion, a glimpse into that that fundamental unity. And so like experiencing like, you know, this like in this reality of this experience being all that exists, it's like the idea of love is almost like a moot point or something. Like, it's just like love is like the, I think like real love is like really just is like, is if not conscious, at least like a subconscious understanding of this reality. And it's not about a grasping kind of love. I have to have you, you know. Like it's not about a particular person that is like, you know, that you project into your world, that, you know, like, there's neither walking nor talking in this part of the video. And it's just experience. I feel the things, you know, just I'm just sensing everything. Sight, sound, touch, smell. And, you know, some thoughts. But I'm just experiencing all these things and just feeling I'm unperturbed by anything. It feels nice to be sitting. To have the weight off of my feet. I'm gonna turn myself around so I can look at this sunset, this sky darkening. You know, I have this feeling like how I was thinking before about, you know, how remembering past times when I feel the sense of the separate self, and pain and difficulty and like kind of like compulsion to do things like eat and sleep, or go to work, you know, things needed to maintain myself. Like I just kind of I had like an experience just now of like understanding that state of being as being like totally contiguous with this one, as being also just another part of this reality of only experience exists, of the you know, the absence of still being completely absent of self. Like when, you know, when those things happening, like experiencing hunger and then eating, and there's still not existing a separate self in that experience. There's still, you know, of free will and agency still being a kind of projection from the present. You know, I had this experience, you know, like I'm standing here and I'm seeing the sky get darker and feeling the air get colder, and then a thought occurs to me, maybe I should start walking home now. But before that thought occurred, before I perceived that thought in my mind, I felt a feeling which was triggered by the sensory input, you know, darkening sky and temperature dropping a little bit, you know, and it's just like a feeling that just like mildly nudges me out of you know, what would be just an equilibrium of sitting on that rock, you know, sitting on that rock and like feeling a very like profound sense of calm and peace. But then, you know, this slight feeling kind of nudging me in a direction that's triggered by the light dimming temperature dropping, and a knowledge, a thought, a conception about where my home is, and a knowledge that at that, you know, that home is the place where moving towards that is where I can maintain my equilibrium, you know. Where, you know, meeting my bodily needs is a way in which the relatively superficial qualities of my experience, you know, my you know, the possibility for me to experience the ease of being in this body, just meeting, you know, doing certain things like eating and sleeping, and, you know, maintaining the right body temperature, like I just, you know, like our sensory perception and the mental structures that are associated with those, they happen, and they guide us towards this equilibrium, and that happens without a real self, you know, being there doing the decisions. Like it happens, and like that's, you know, sense of self can kind of like can conceptually exist, you know, like as previously mentioned, but it's not necessary, you know. No like absolute or fundamental, like, separate self is required to exist to maintain this equilibrium of experience. And, you know, even this idea that I'm talking about of equilibrium is just that. It is an idea, and it is dependent on you know, this illusion of the continuity of self. Like a more accurate picture of reality is more like in some way to look at it in like kind of like a scientific materialist perspective of you know, the way our mind, being dependent on this body, does things to maintain, you know. And I'm still just talking about things for a moment in terms of like a linear time, so we're kind of abstractly now talking about linear time. The mind doing things to maintain the integrity of this body, that's what the mind is for. You know, the mind, you know, receives this sensory input and just does things to develops knowledge and strategies of maintaining the body. But it's like, it's all, you know, all of this is still, there's no need for the self to exist for all of this to happen. There's no need to, there's no need for like anything other than this experience, this current present experience, to explain anything. Like even the notion of explaining something, to explain something, is kind of like fitting it into our conceptual framework that that it involves time. And so maybe I'm now like, maybe my mind is now tending to stray more into this abstraction of time. And I wonder if that's not related to my mind now, you know, moving me towards the condition, the necessary conditions for my maintained equilibrium, and that being going towards home. Like I have a conception here. I have a conception here of going towards my home, but when I observe that as a conception, then I can see that still, you know, I just, as always, as eternally, there's this experience now, and that's all there is. And within this experience, I'm experiencing this conception of going towards home. I can see that my home now, from this perspective, is an abstract image in my mind, you know, memories, but it's, you know, it's not like vivid. There's not like a vivid picture of home sticking in my mind. If I try and, you know, bring that up consciously on purpose, I can, like, you know, imagine what my home looks like in my mind. I can recall, you know, memories of like what food is in my fridge. Oh, I can see some stars. Amazing. See a few stars. There's Orion. I can see Orion. Or at least part of him. Amazing. And, you know, I can experience the sensation of like, of chilliness, you know. The body feels like slightly chillier than before. slightly colder. And I have, I have that sensory information, but like even for me to call it sensory information is still putting an unnecessary division into this experience. It's because like coldness is only just a component of this reality that there is. And then that sensation of coldness is probably linked in my mind. It stimulates a mental structure that a concept of warmth, a memory of feeling of warmth, the opposite, which is associated with my home. And so kind of automatically I feel drawn towards home. But still, it's still like just now I'm having this experience. Like conceptually there's movement. Conceptually there's movement and change, and there's a future and a past and a goal. But I'm still able to experience that conception as like just this projection of this present experience of and I kind of think of this type of experience. I don't know. I want to say like this type of experience is like what is fundamental to love. Like maybe we tend to associate this like this sense of immediacy or something, of this variety of experience with interpersonal intimacy or something. Maybe that's like a common entryway or something. But then there's this other entryway that's just just observation. Observing your experience. And as I feel, it's funny, I was gonna say, as I feel this draw towards home as being, the way to maintain the equilibrium of this experience, or I don't know. I was tempted to say that I might start to feel my thoughts kind of pull into like a little more active or more like fragmented types of thoughts about towards perceived objects. But then when I was going to say that, then I realized I was just observing that happen and realized that the more fundamental experience happening was not of that. It was just of continuing to observe, and like there's no effort being expended here. Like even the notion of effort feels foreign. And like still the notion of worry feels foreign, feels illusory, It's like I'm not concentrating, I'm not focusing on, I'm not like effortfully focusing on anything. I'm just like continuing to exist. And it doesn't feel like I could do anything else. It doesn't feel like there's no thought about where my mind should go. there's no feeling of worrying, like, what if I should be thinking about certain things, or thinking in any kind of way, or not even worrying about, trying to like cling to this way of experiencing the nowness or something like that. That's not even a worry. There's no worry about what other, what I am in the world, what people think about me. It's just like, that's just, it's like unthinkable or something. It's like the basis of that notion is absent. Still this connection, I guess, like, what I'm calling a connection with you, I guess, like, feels like an important component of this experience, but still but it still doesn't feel totally true to call it a connection with you, because like that's still implying that separateness. Like, this is just it, you know what I'm talking about. It is like dark here, and I feel like a certain kind of arousal of my senses, like feel that darkness kind of arousing a certain alertness in me. The thought occurred to me that I feel really happy. But like, saying that thought, I think, relates to memory of feeling otherwise, feeling sad or frustrated or angry or whatever, all kinds of unhappy feelings, of which there are many. And it was when I was remembering that I had the thought, I'm really happy right now. There's the waterfall over there. I don't know how much you can see. I can just see like a vague white spot where the waterfall is. But then, you know, it occurred to me, like, this thought, like, is this a thought that I'm happy, or is this like a feeling? Like, certainly I'm having these feelings, you know, and then can label that feeling of being happy. But at the same time, like the notion of happiness feels like kind of diffuse or something. The notion of these separate states, these separate emotions, like my experience of emotions, like, doesn't feel like separate and defined and categorized. Like they all just feel like certain facets of reality, certain aspects of the same thing. So, like, you know, like when I had that thought, like I feel happy right now, and it felt I realized, I understood that, you know, this category of happiness I'm thinking of, like, was totally dependent on its opposite of, you know, of a memory of feeling the opposite, and like those being completely like linked in my mind as a duality, as like I feel happy now because I don't feel sad like I did, and like understanding that without that sadness there wouldn't be the happiness, and so forth, and like, you know, just letting go of that duality, because like that's the kind of duality that like is dependent on the experience of time and the conception of time, and it's like, and like perpetuates this illusion of time, you know, like this dualistic thinking of like, I'm happy now and I was happy now, I'm sad in the past, or I'm sad now, I was happy in the past. Like it's dependent on having this of experiencing like linear time as being real, and then it perpetuates that illusion of linear time being real. And then like when you start to perceive that the duality of those things, their inseparableness, they're being two sides of the same coin, that illusion of linear time also starts to lose its grip on you. And then as you lose this, as the illusion of time loses its grip, then like that illusion of these like separate states, these separate emotional states, loses its grip on you. Wow. Clouds are moving fast. Wow. And speaking of the illusion of time, I can't see the timer on the camera because it's so dark inside. I don't really know where we're at, how much longer we have in this walking and talking episode, but you know, we'll find out when we get back to a lit area. But like, I don't know, it keeps occurring to me just to say that like I love you, and like why do I feel you know, sometimes like this inhibiting tinge of embarrassment to say that? I think it's like, I think it has to do maybe with what I said before about you know, when you saying I love you, like it could be reifying this illusion of separateness to imply that there's an I and a you to begin with, you know. Like maybe that's the embarrassment, but like the urge has been coming up to say that I love you, and in this instance maybe it's just like a reminder, like, you know, maybe my mind does drift into this me and you feeling, and then I love you like comes up as like kind of a reminder, like a drawing back towards the unity. I've never walked here at night before. I feel so peaceful. But then, you know, then again, this notion of I feel so peaceful, like that's maybe linked in my mind to like when the notion of feeling the opposite, feeling like the wrench and pull and pain of existence, and like I can't discount that aspect of reality, but I can directly perceive its intrinsic connectedness with this feeling of peace, with its, it being again another false duality, like the difference between pain, separateness, suffering, being, inseparable, like still like inseparably like connected to this experience of peacefulness. Like if I get, if I get attached to this feeling of peacefulness, if I get attached to this feeling of peacefulness, this notion that this is a state that I can like hold on to forever, then when I can't hold, when I lose my grip because because I'm experiencing a self that's clinging on to a state or something, that's when the suffering is going to kick in order to degrade this notion of separate self. That's what the suffering does. The suffering is the degradation of the notion of separate self. And the more you keep building up the notion of separate self, the more suffering has to come in to keep it under control. As I don't know. Don't struggle against the suffering. Don't try to avoid the suffering, like pushing it away, hiding it under something else, using some kind of pleasurable experience to avoid the suffering. You don't want to do that. If there's suffering, you want to you actually want to experience it fully without and experience what it's doing to I don't know. That might not be entirely accurate. It's you don't need to that doesn't mean you are masochistic and you stay in a bad situation on purpose. That's not what I'm talking about. More like the inner sense of pain, Don't try to bury that under pleasure. Because if there's pain there and you're able to experience it fully in a way that lets you just sink to the bottom of it, that's how you get to the bottom of reality and be able to see it more clearly. It's like, and this is not a special experience. Hey, buddy. This is just normal experience. No problem. Like this doesn't have to be a special experience, you know. And it's like there's nothing special about this experience. It's the most normal experience that there is. In fact, it's, you know, it just is all that there is. It's all that there ever will be, and it's all that there ever has been. And even this notion of has been and will be are false, because it's just eternally this now. And there is no past or future. Apart from, I've said this before, but like, apart from the projection out of the present, the mental projection out of the present. My experience feels as normal as could possibly be. And even the idea of an abnormal experience seems foreign. All of it being just like, you know, like different pictures on a screen. Like experience being, if the screen is the real nature of experience, it being eternal and unchanging, and just, you know, the particular qualities of experience just being different plays of light upon that screen. Like it, in some sense though, as I'm walking back towards my home, and I'm walking back into this more populated area where there's more people and lights and cars and activity and stuff. Like I have this feeling of returning or something. Like, if our mode of experience in this video is somehow exalted, or I don't know, or eternal, or an experience of the infinite. As I return home, maybe I experience my mind returning back to the finite mode of thinking, or maybe back into this projection of myself, of my thoughts. My thoughts are, returning to like attached to perceived objects in my world, perceived people in my world, but like returning with like a real a sense of peace pervading any of that. Or an understanding that, if I return to any, lack of peace, that is not something, it's not something that's disconnected from peace. It's not, if I have to deal with like perceived problems in my life, like that. I don't know, some certain understanding that even in the lack of understanding, there's still truth. And there's always truth to whatever whatever is the contents of experience. Yeah, I can notice my mind. I can notice my mind start to deal with particular, what I'm calling abstractions in my life, but also, understanding the truth of them, and the usefulness of that, and how what that is my mind working to keep me moving towards this feeling of equilibrium, towards this towards the conditions in which this feeling of freedom continue. And it's as if, to the extent that attachments and aversions exist that put this artificial division between myself and the rest of the world, my mind has to deal with those things as if they're real. And that dealing is like a very real thing, dealing with your life, dealing with every problem that you have. In order to be able, to not forget about the fundamental nature of experience. I was moving towards this equilibrium of experience, this clear understanding of experience, like water going downhill. And at times you have to work uphill to get down there, You have to overcome obstacles. But, in another sense, all of that is like the dealing with the difficulties, dealing with the problems. All of that is like is the essential nature of reality, like experiencing itself. Like, going through processes that are, if that makes any sense. You know, it's like you come back and you still have to wash the dishes and clean your room and make some dinner and brush your teeth and do all the things. You always got to keep doing all the things. And there's not a separation. There's not a real separation from doing those things, doing the things in your life. Taking care of yourself, taking care of other people around you. There's not a separation between that and experiencing the fundamental nature of reality, of realizing that experience is all that there is. All that stuff, all doing all those things, it exists within experience. It's, a component of it. And you're a component of it. And you doing these things, you taking care of yourself and others, you taking care of your life, that is reality playing itself out. And you can't reject any part of that. You can't say like, it doesn't follow that it's like, I have experienced this liberation now. I am irresponsible to the rest of the world. It doesn't work like that, because that would still be like harboring this delusion of your separate self. It is not possible to abandon the world, You can realize your fundamental connectedness with it, the fundamental unity, and realize the illusory nature of that duality between yourself and world. But that in no way applies that that now you are liberated from the world, and you can just ignore it. If anything, it's like you have to be more intimately engaged with it. And you understand responsibility in such a much deeper way that no longer is, a sense of responsibility felt like it's compelled onto you by society. The sense of responsibility comes like deeply from within yourself, feeling, understanding this fundamental unity with everything. It's like there's not a self to gain something, and there's not a self to lose anything. So you're just here, like you and the world are together. Like you're one thing. You're not against the world. You're with it, and like the notion of helping becomes like automatic and intrinsic, and even like kind of disappears as just like an integral aspect of being. Like helping is just an innate, inseparable aspect of existing. And it's like you don't even have to think about helping, because it's just innate in your nature. It's not like any specific behaviors are indicated.